The robed man. 4 figures stand before an otherworldly apprentice. An ancient structure of chiseled adra and metallic veins, ominous and looming like a silent observer. Standing motionless in their midst is what appears to be a human body, colourless as stone or ash. The other figures gaze upon it in what might be contemplation. From your vantage point, you are well obscured from their view. The figures closest to the machine stand out amongst them. A thick grey beard frames a face otherwise hidden beneath a metallic mask. His faded robes are embroidered with runic language, unlike anything you've ever seen. And he wears a strange black headdress with 2 protrusions that jut out like the wings of some malevolent creature.
Oathbinder, bear witness, and see this man has kept his word true to his last breath, full to his blood's last drop. Guide his soul, queen that was, and regard it among your favored. Let his life by the key be his confession. Let his death by the key be his absolution. May he walk the world ever free of the crushing weight of the book. Your brother has done his part, and you have seen the power of his contribution. I will accept no further hesitation from the rest of you. In the sight of the queen that was, will you fulfill the oath? Will you take your place beside your brother in the endless esteem of her memory that is without flaw? Step forth, and be assured of the great worth of your life's course.
You awaken to find your malice has broken, wherever that is, only to be replaced with something far more concerning. Faint whispers are audible at the edge of your hearing, like a ringing in your ears that does not subside. Moments flit through your periphery, but when you turn to look, you can see no sign of whatever it was. You find your gaze regularly darting this way and that, an involuntary paranoid tick. If this is a sickness, it may be dangerous to go without treatment for long. The figure at the machine stands frozen in place, flesh and blood replaced by cinders and ash. The man who led them is nowhere to be seen. Heoden and Kaliska lie bloody on the uneven cobbles, their bodies twisted unnaturally in death. You are alone and far from help. Gilded Vow may be your best hope of receiving treatment before things get worse. Leveled up. Your character has become fatigued. Fatigue represents the physical and psychological wear and tear of demanding activities on a character.
Can't move now.
The idea of the scene came out of necessity. Initially, this was all supposed to happen somewhere inside the ruin. However, it clashed with our non-linear philosophies. In order to have the information communicated to the player about Theos and the Soul Machine, it needed to be staged just right and go off without a hitch. By placing it in the ruin itself, it meant some of the non-linearity would need to be sacrificed in order to create a hard gate for the player. So we as designers could make sure we knew the exact moment this event would be triggered. At Obsidian, we often have quests and scenarios that branch in a myriad of ways. Each of these branches are conditioned by what we call gates. These gates keep the game responding to the player by closing off paths and opening new ones based off actions they perform. A piece of dialogue, for instance, might be gated by a certain amount of disposition. This helps reinforce the suspension of disbelief for the player because to them, the world is responding according to their actions in a real way. A hard gate, however, implies a more rigid gate, one that is meant to funnel the player to a singular point by making sure the gate is only open by a singular action. In this instance, a hard gate was needed so we could know the exact position of the player as well as make sure they were not in combat or doing some other action simultaneously. This is often achieved by level transitions. Since we know the player cannot travel while in combat, we don't need to worry about that. In one scene results in the visuals of the whole level being curtailed for this one pivotal moment.
Gilded Vow. We have to go there.
Ready to sleep like the dead.
wavy coat in the back there. So we're going to have to go down a tunnel.
The Valewood is the first wilderness the player is introduced to in the game. Like any Infinity Engine wilderness, these areas are rife with dangers, treasures tucked away in nooks and crannies, as well as your fair share of characters with tasks or quests of their own. A lot of what we wanted to do with this wilderness was lead the player towards the Gilded Vale, using the characters they meet along the way. By giving the player the option to get involved with either the bandit camp or Naunton down near the south end of the map, it gives the player the impetus to explore the Gilded Vale once they arrive, now that they have acquired a few tasks to investigate. We also wanted to, again, reinforce the non-linearity of the game by putting those encounters off the beaten path, more or less. That way, if the player wanted to beeline straight for the Gilded Vale and happened to miss these NPCs, they could get leads about them in town and come back to the wilderness later.
Some rest.
A figure drifts suspended in the musty air of the cavern. Its form and features blur and twist in a cascading ripples of incandescence. You feel its energy ebbing about your limbs, filling them with a heavy chill. Why not? You reach out a hand for the spirit. In the moment of contact, you feel as if you have been struck a blow, head reeling as you tumble helplessly into a waiting darkness. Light booms at the edge of your vision. You feel the sun at your back and the weight of a bow in your hand. You know suddenly that you have come a long way from the Vale, hunting deer. Now you are standing before a cavern, and the darkness extends far into its depths. Even so, your friend strides out before you, his red cloak flapping in his heels. You follow, heart hammering in your chest, as he leads you deeper into the cavern. There is a roar like thunder, echoing around you. Fear seizes you, casts you stumbling back towards the exit, towards the light and the escape. You see a glint of steel, and there is a sudden, terrible flash of agony behind your knee. You scream, stumble, and fall. Your thoughts are chaos, lanced through with pain, but in a moment of terrible clarity you see your friend look back from the mouth of the cavern, his dagger daubed in crimson to match his cloak. And then there is a great dark shape above you, and then there is more pain. Vision recedes and you are thrown back into yourself with seemingly relentless force. The corpse lies at your feet, and the spectre lingers. In the span of energy between you both, you feel a sense of questioning, of confusion, of anger. I will find the man who did this to you and have him brought to justice. You were betrayed, only a fool could have seen that coming. Passionate. For a moment the spirit seems to burn bright and your head feels like a sticky triumph. The spirit seems to weaken with the force of its own exhilaration, growing fainter and fainter until you are alone once more. Fight!
Ready to sleep like the dead.
The young dwarf tending to the stew looks up, startled. As he sees you approach, he drops his ladle, spattering stew across the ground. What? The bandit turns. Get him, you dog, and make sure our new cook don't run off. Help, please help me. One of the bandits gives 10 free a kick as they pass him, and he huddles.
Can't move now.
Good day to you.
By the flame, thank you, thank you, thank you. I thought I'd be stuck cooking for those ignorant weasels for the rest of my life. Or until they were bored with me, I suppose. I must get back home. I only hope they haven't hired a replacement. The dwarf looks anguish. Listen, next time you're in Gilded Vow, stop by the Black Hound Inn. I'll let Pascal know just what you've done for me, and I'm sure she'll do the right by you in turn. Oh, to be back at my own oven again.
ready to sleep like the dead.
You must be one of the new settlers. Welcome to Gilded Vale. You'll be pleased to know that we've had some recent vacancies here. Of course, we'll need to make some inquiries first. The inestimable Lord Radric VII has taken great pains to insulate our town from Widewind's legacy. Have you ever sired a Hollowborn child? Are you absolutely certain? Lord Raderick has made it his first priority to eliminate this scourge from our village. I should warn you, stranger. Here in Gilded Vale, we have a special place for dissidents, charlatans, and those who would hide a curse in our midst. His lordship's wife is with child and due any day now. Without his approval, I shan't be able to find you a permanent settlement. It will have to wait until after the birth. We can continue our interview then, after the bell tolls from Radric's hold to signal my lord's new heir. In the meantime, you can find temporary accommodations at the inn just southwest of here. Whatever your problem, it sounds like a matter for an animancer. However, the only animancer in Gilded Vale isn't in any condition to speak. Consider yourself fortunate. After she failed Lord Radric, we saw to it that she wouldn't profit from the misplaced trust of others. A bad cure is often worse than none at all. But if you're set on finding a bottle of troll piss or a dead Audra pebble to rub on your forehead, you're welcome to check her pockets. A little corpse stink is nothing when you're digging for shit. My advice, however, is to be satisfied that you escaped and leave it at that.
I forget that the foreigners do not have this curse in your homelands. The Hollowborn have been a scourge upon the dry wood for almost 15 years now. Children born without souls. Pitiful dumb things that breathe barely but do not truly live. Some say the Hollowborn are disease. Some say they are punishment from the gods. In truth, no one knows, but they began spreading after the Saints' War, so the name Wadenvin's legacy struck in honour of that foul, blasphemous pretender. Lord Radix's decrees may seem strict at times, but he has our best interests at heart. You'll want to mind where you mention this. Trespassing on Egwith's ruin is illegal, not to mention dangerous. You probably saw someone attempting some new ritual to appease the gods. People will try anything these days. Bereth, have mercy, we certainly have. If you'd been that close to a Biowick, you wouldn't be standing here.
Keep out of...
Listen!
2 tolls. Let that be the last.
3. Gods have mercy.
It seems your arrival is ill-timed. 3 bells toll only for the death of a Radric. I fear Lord Radric's heir is lost, or else Hollowborn, and so lost all the same. You should tread carefully. Circumstances have changed a great deal.
You come to us at the time of mourning. The legacy has struck at the heart of Gilded Vale. Our efforts to redeem ourselves in the eyes of Bereth must be redoubled. What happened? I would know more details when the messengers arrive. The vagaries of childbirth, perhaps, but that is not your concern. I can be sure of nothing right now. I advise you to get some rest in the inn or a stable for all I care. Find me afterwards. I will know more soon enough.
It's usually best to leave the beginning of the game for last. So this area was designed in the advanced stages of development. The idea here was to convey a rundown, bleak farmer's town that suffers from the iron rule of a local warlord. Redrick is the name, whose hall lies nearby, and it's also its own adventure area. Here in Gilded Vale, it was important to give a glimpse of how bad things really were in this world right away. So I made sure to design the layout in such a way that the tree with the hanging bodies became one of the first things to appear in view when you first arrived to town. Another important buildings to introduce you included an inn, because you need an inn somewhere at the start of an RPG, that's just expected. Places to shop and tinker, like the blacksmith and the mill, and also places that would illuminate background history, like the ruins of the Elthasian temple, which figures in the general narrative that we constructed in the area's quests and characters.
I said I could grab one of the bodies, didn't I? Perhaps not.
Were you looking for someone in that tree? I could introduce you.
see 4 people gathered by the door to the inn. Their raised voices and chopping gestures suggest an argument reaching its climax. The first figure raises his hand for calm. His face is partially obscured by a hood, but his height and stature suggest an elf.
I meant no offense. Let's put this matter to rest over a round, shall we? My treat.
Hoping to soothe our pride with a few Adira coppers, eh? We don't need your coin.
One of the other men glare at the hooded elf. His eyes are red from drink, but his gaze is focused. We're humble folk, but we're no fools. Not like he thinks. Mocking us while he shelters in our village. We don't take to that kind of talk from foreigners, especially not Adrians. Wherever Adrians are. The woman looks you up and down, and this means you too don't push us. Oh, thanks.
Go on. Say it again. I'm itching for an excuse.
Why, you're itching for the kindling touch of your sister, you cocksfeather!
I'll cut that barrel-licking tongue out of your head.
This is a misunderstanding. I didn't say whatever it is you think I said. We've nigh quarrel.
That's where you're wrong.
We don't take orders from any blazing Adrians. We don't take charity neither. They squint at you through red, bleary eyes. It sounds suspicious, like you're defending him. Fair enough.
Not quite how I hoped to get to know the neighbors. Thank you for your timely assistance with that awkward situation.
He gives you a quick smile. Courtesy is a rare pleasure in these parts, as is the company of a fellow countryman. He straightens his hood, and you note the remains of fraying embroidery on his gloves. His boots are caked with the dirt of many months' travel, but the leatherwork beneath it is sturdy and fine.
I suppose introductions are in order after that little fiasco. Aloth Corvusser, at your service. I'm a wizard by training, and an adventurer by necessity. I was born in the Seathwood, part of the mainland of the Adir Empire. Both of my parents served the nobility, which afforded me an education for which I'm grateful. However, there were no open positions in those houses, and so I decided to seek new means in a new land. And how exactly did you come to be here? In Gwithan Ruins? Well, those can be dangerous places during the best of times, which these are not. And half the locals would arrest you for trespassing, and the rest would kill you outright. I'm curious, what exactly did you find there? And you survived? I've heard such a thing was impossible. But it seems you either have a knack for timing or the favor of the gods. An excellent question. I came looking for fresh air and cheap land. Instead, the magistrate gave me directions to the inn and a story about the local lord's expectant wife. But I take it that's a familiar tale. Indeed. The local lord has searched far and wide for similar specialists. He has rid himself of them almost as desperately. I'm afraid that was a matter of misunderstandings and mistranslations. It doesn't help that people in these parts remember their war with Adir like it was yesterday.
Oh, that. Yeah. As I tried to tell them, they misheard me. Happens all too easily after a few pints, and the accent doesn't help.
Begging your pardon, but neither do you. Yet, circumstances can find a person in the strangest of places. As should I, given recent events. It's just as well. I've had enough of the watered wine and lumpy beds at the inn. They say even the owner tired of the place. Just up and left one day. It explains quite a lot about the upkeep. Perhaps I could join you. I could use a change of scenery, and I find it's better to travel in numbers. Excellent. I shall follow you.
There's a couple of jokes in here about the inn's previous owner having disappeared, you might note, and that grew out of our never hearing back from the inn backer. It's all meant in good fun, of course. I had a little poster in my office of the old promo art for Baldur's Gate 3, and while we were thinking of names for this place, I started using the Black Hound as a placeholder, thinking that it wouldn't stick. It ended up getting the thumbs up, and Josh Sawyer asked Art to implement the poster image as a stained glass window on the lower floor. The dog upstairs actually came later. Once we started assigning locations to the various pets, the placement for the black dog seemed fairly obvious.
Welcome.
Hello and welcome to you. Oh, it's you. Tenrith told us what you did for him. It's such a relief to have him back. I can't thank you enough. Consider yourself a favourite of the house. Discount on drinks, rooms. Temri said he wanted to whip up something nice for you. He's already back to work in the kitchen. So what would you like? You see a woman emptying her satchel onto her bed, taking stock of her inventory. Potions, bandages, tinctures and herbs are scattered throughout her room haphazardly. She bites her lip, head tilted to the side, considering she begins to repack. One item after another, carefully deliberation, undercut by shaking hands. Each item has clearly marked place, but no matter how she repacks it, she isn't satisfied. The shaking worsens as she empties it out once more. One hand held to her mouth, tears eke from her eyes as she gives up all semblance of order and shoves everything she can in the satchel. Grabbing it and running out of the bare house. Straightening her back, she walks to the docks, chin high, eyes hard and red. A gangly young elf offers his condolences, but she can't see him for the ocean ahead of her. She wanders the docks, offering her services as a doctor to any who will listen. Anyone heading out to high tide. Less than an hour later, she watches her childhood disappear in the distance, a tiny speck of an island, and tries not to jump. You see a group of young men standing around a makeshift practice target. This man stands in the middle of them, explaining the construction and use of a bow. He holds it up, pointing out each part as he speaks about it and what it does. He then walks away from the target, telling them to remain where they are, and takes his place about 200 feet away. He carefully lines up his shot, explaining what he is doing. As he does and lets the arrow fly, it hits the target dead center, much to the surprise and delight of the boys near it. He smiles, walking towards the boys, talking about proper stance and how to most effectively hold a bow. The noise comes from the tree line near their practice venue, and he stops, scanning the woods, blue eyes squinting against the sun. A shadow moves, making its way through the forest behind them. He draws an arrow and lines up the shot, carefully tracking the motion of the hidden creature. Loosing the arrow, he wastes no time and quickly grabs another. The boys spin, watching the arrow fly into the forest. Immediately lost amongst the trees, there is a sudden, explosive movement in the undergrowth as a deer erupts from the tree line. Running across the edge of the clearing, the boys laugh, turning to joke with the man about his lousy shot. They stop talking, seeing him holding the bow and leading the deer with a nocked arrow. They drop to the ground as he loosens this last arrow, which flies true and strikes the deer right behind its shoulder, piercing heart and lungs and dropping it dead almost immediately. The boys stare at the deer for a few seconds and then slowly turn to look at the man, newfound respect in their eyes. He smiles again and breathes a quiet sigh of relief. You see a man soar through the air, hitting a nearby wall with a nauseous crunch. He doesn't get up. He's a Daka, a burly, clean-cut warrior with a carnivorous grin. Turns and shoves his fist into the stomach of another assailant. Removing another from the impromptu brawl. The bar is a whirlwind of elbows, knees, fists and feet, with no end in sight, and he is in his element. In the corner, 3 smaller men speak quietly, throwing malicious glances at the larger man in the centre. He breaks a chair over a tattooed head, crackling. The trio position themselves in 3 parts of the room, and with a tense nod they charge. Unfortunately for them, the man sees them coming. Something in his eyes burns brightly, and all 3 slump to the ground in an agony that's all in their minds. The burly man bows to the room of the unconscious and incapacitated before sauntering out, off-key whistle trailing behind him. You see a long empty road cutting through 2 large fields. The air is silent and the land seems to still for every afternoon. This woman walks slowly on the road, leading a horse. Curiously looking around, she seems to sense something wrong, but is unable to discern what it is. She stops, sniffling at the air, her nose high, her brow crinkles, and she casts about looking for something. The air is clear, no clouds. She sniffs again, still looking around, confusion clouding her face. Mouthing a single word, fire. She looks out across the fields, her confusion turning to fear. She holds her hands up to block the sun from her eyes and scans the field again. Not finding what she was looking for, she jumps onto her horseback, the fear quickly becoming panic. She kicks, sending the horse shooting down the path, which bends around some trees to where the farmhouse should be. She pulls up short, horror now in residence on her face as she stares at the burned and charred mess that used to be her family's home. Tears well in her eyes, and she kicks again, racing to the rubble. I think we'll rest and call it for this episode. I can't get that. There we go.
Welcome.